our good friend, Colonel Gordon Cucullu. Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Cucullu is a former Green Beret, and he has spent his life honoring and serving those who serve us, not only serving with them, but writing about them, like in his first book, Separated at Birth, How North Korea Became the Evil Twin. When Gitmo was being accused, those soldiers in Gitmo were being accused of everything by the left. Colonel Cucullu wrote the book Inside Gitmo and set the record straight. And when we looked at our warrior police across the country, across the world, in zones where we are today, Afghanistan, his wife and him, he wrote the book Warrior Police. Since then, he has started the Valhalla Project, a project dedicated to having post 9/11 veterans and those that served in the war zones adjust to coming back home. Valhalla Project does that in the Ozarks, and he is the president of that organization. Welcome back, Colonel.
Oh, great to be back, Crane. Thanks for having me on, as usual.
Always. Tell me, I'm going to play a clip for you, and this is Chuck Todd, and he is speaking to the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America CEO, Paul Rykov. And I wanted you to get the flavor of how the press is covering this and presenting it and how it was received by people desiring for the veterans to get care. I don't mean to say that the press doesn't have desire for people to get care, but sometimes they're more into protecting the president because ideologically they line up. And as we know, Chuck Todd was in the Harkin camp before he became the media personality that he is and reporter, White House chief reporter for NBC News. Roll it.
And that's the thing. It's just all, nobody seems to be able to tame the bureaucracy. So what do? I mean, what is the deep? That's always the president's, rational frustration here. He says, I don't want to just fire somebody because you hear that. If you fire somebody, then maybe people stop paying attention to this scandal.
Well, it's very
so
hard.
It is rooted in
it is very hard to get fired in this administration. I mean, we're trying to think about the last person who was fired, and it might have been McChrystal, right? And it was because he spoke truth to power and said what he really thought. So I think here with Shinseki, whether he stays or go, there are deeply entrenched problems. Yesterday, Boehner put forth a VA Accountability Act that will empower the VA to fire people. We've supported
that bill is already passed.
And now it's going to go to the Senate. And
I imagine it'll fly.
Well, it probably will. And that's been the problem throughout this, is that the House has continued to be aggressive on veterans issues, and the Senate's been pretty silent. The oversight on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee by Bernie Sanders has not been aggressive, and they've really got to step up their game because they're at fault here, too. Both committees, the president, everybody in Congress, they can't just throw Shinseki under the bus alone. Everyone knew this was happening. There have been GAO reports and IG reports and hearing after hearing after hearing. So if you're not outraged already, you haven't been paying attention.
Colonel, there have been those who have actually defended Shinseki, saying, hey, he's a veteran himself from the Vietnam War, had half his foot blown off. Our friend, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, spoke to that. Here's my question to you. When you look at the way this is being handled, not by Shinseki, but by the President of the United States, what is your response to that as a leader? If you're analyzing it, saying, hey, what would a leader do here? Would he do what President Obama has been doing?
No, the essence of the whole issue since 2008 election, Crane, is that President Obama is not a leader, he's an organizer. And there's a huge difference there. A leader takes responsibility, initiates action, completes follow-up to make sure that his directives have been accomplished in the way that he wants them to be, and then adjusts accordingly. An organizer simply gets everybody together in a room. They all agree on a certain policy, then they go out and do whatever they want to do with no follow-up, with no accountability, and with more interest in protecting the group than they are in actually accomplishing a mission. And I think that's the big difference here. If we heard one more time on one more scandalous issue that the White House just learned about it through the newspapers or through the media, then, even those friendly to the Obama administration are beginning to say, this is gross incompetence. This guy is completely out of touch. He has no credibility. And, when you've got the true believers fleeing the ship of state like rats, then it tells you something deeply wrong in the whole organization and administration of the place. And frankly, I think it's a coward's way out. To constantly dodge responsibility and to pretend that this was unknown. And candidly, back to my other point, you get to a certain point and you say, well, if you're the boss and you don't know even, any details of anything that's going on in your administration, then you're not a good president. So it's a lose-lose situation for the administration. But, even worse, it's a lose-lose situation for the American public and in this particular scandal for our veterans.
Colonel, we're talking about President Obama as a leader, and obviously we've put the focus on the Veterans Administration and the scandal and 40 veterans who died in Phoenix on the wait list, and he made some comments, and we talked about that earlier this week. You went to the greater issue of leadership, which I asked about, and I want to ask you, are you a bit shocked just how incompetent the president is when it comes to dealing with, quote, scandals? Because it seems he knows how to message, and you mentioned that, the idea of being a community organizer versus a leader. You have one idea, you don't have any responsibility really other than to extract something as a community organizer. It's not up to you if it stays around the institution or whatever it is, as long as you get what you want. And it's very direct versus being a leader and recognizing you're serving all, and you've got to do, and you've got to fix things, and you've got to fix it from the top floor to the bottom floor. Could you expound upon that just a little more? Because I think some people look at this and say, you bash President Obama. No, I'm saying he's not up for the task. He can't do it.
Well, I think that's the issue right there, is that, he won on several fronts. I mean, as the listeners know, first he wasn't Bush. And there was a hysterical frenzy in the media and in the country, we got to get rid of Bush. Bush is the cause of all problems, all that sort of stuff. We've all heard that ad infinitum. The second thing was that he told a good story. He scripted well and he read well from his teleprompter. We've since learned that when he has to do things ad lib, he's a lot less facile at that sort of presentation. And then I think that leadership is a demonstrated thing. It's not something that you can say you have and then people automatically go along with it. Leadership is something that you exhibit by your behavior, not by your rhetoric. And when it gets past saying things nicely, then this president falls flat on his face. And it has nothing to do with, his race or his, whatever particular creed he may adhere to. It simply is a lack of talent in that area. He may be the most whiz-bang community organizer the world has ever seen. I don't know. But I do know that he's way down on the list of incompetencies in leadership. And frankly, I mean, I wouldn't have had a junior officer of his incompetence still in a position of leadership without having severe and multiple counseling sessions with that person to explain what he needed to do and how he needed to do it. I mean, the first thing you learn in leadership is responsibility. You take responsibility for what's done and what's not done. The second thing you learn to do is to wield judicious authority, and that there's times when that's very difficult. It may be you may have to fire someone you like, you may have to criticize someone you like, but you have to look at the mission itself and then work toward the accomplishment of that mission. And basically, what we've seen here for since 2009 is complete abrogation of any sense of responsibility, and to the point where everything is always someone else's fault, whether it's the previous administration, whether it's Congress, whether it's the system. I mean, that's what we're hearing now, is that the Constitution itself is broken because this administration can't seem to function within the dictates of the Constitution. And so you just get to the point where you have to call it what it is, and in this case, it's just a complete and utter lack of any sort of ability to lead a nation. I mean, candidly, I don't think this guy would be a good Boy Scout leader. But, that aside, we've already seen. I mean, our foreign policy is in a shambles. Our domestic
address
policy is
that.
in a shambles.
Address that real quick. We've got about 4 minutes left, but please feel free just to take it all with this question. Question is this. He talked about ending wars. You had a conversation with someone who disagreed with the Iraq War a while back. I remember talking about it with you on the plane. And you kept on asking, well, what do you do? How do you deal with this kind of, what's the solution? The left never really has solutions on how to fix things or follow through. So tell me, when you look at the current situation with Putin, one, have we vastly underestimated Vladimir Putin? Two, what are the consequences of a nuclear Iran? Colonel.
Well, let's look at the whole picture here. And just today we heard that it was released in the news that the Chinese and the Russians have come up with a 30-year deal for, I think it's $400 billion in natural gas exports from Siberia that will be imported into China. China and Russia are having joint naval exercises for the first time. China and Russia have agreed that they would work together for mutual interests. They include Iran in this. I keep lapsing back into the Soviet Union. The Russians have cut a deal with Iran where they're going to build more nuclear reactors for them. They've already shown that their willingness to restore, if not the Soviet, then certainly the Tsarist Empire of Russia. We're facing a whole new threat out there that we haven't seen before, because since '72 we've managed to break the monolithic China-Russia bloc. Now that Putin has reunited that bloc, he's cemented it together, and with things like these natural gas exports, not only does Putin cement his relationship with the People's Republic of China, but he also backstops himself for these fairly mild sanctions that might be coming out of Europe. Say the Western Europeans say, okay, we're not going to take any more natural gas from the Russians. Hell, he's already got a market out there, Crane, so it's no big deal. They're not going to lose anything. Meanwhile, the so-called pivot to Asia has been adroitly accomplished by Putin, whereas ours has been an abject failure. I mean, President Obama came back from Japan without even being able to come up with a bilateral trade agreement, which, if you can't do that with Japan, you can't do it with anybody. I mean, they've been our allies since the end of World War II. So, to me, this is just symptomatic of a dark, looming force that's not on the horizon anymore, but coming closer and closer, that we're not even recognizing. I mean, we're too absorbed with our own personal minutia, and with the media and some of the true believers still preoccupied with either cheerleading Obama or telling us what a wonderful world it's going to be when Hillary's president. And I just think we're on the verge of a precipice, and nobody's recognizing it.
As a historian, what does history tell us about being in this place that we are right now?
It's a very bad place to be in. We don't want to be here. I mean, we're talking about bringing our military down to pre-Pearl Harbor levels, We're talking about the total absence of any success that I can think of in the foreign policy front. I mean, we treat our allies like dirt, and we acquiesce to anything our enemies want.
Mm-hmm.
We weaken ourselves. Our economy is much worse than people think, and we're getting ready to. I foresee the end of the dollar, the U.S. dollar, as an international currency anymore.
Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Cucullu, there's a reason we have you on at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. We want to say Happy Memorial Day weekend to you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing with the Valhalla Project. People can check that out on the Facebook page. Colonel, pleasure and privilege. Thank you for delivering the truth. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Crane, and urge the listeners to remember what Memorial Day is all about in between your hot dogs and soft drinks.
Amen. Amen. Never forget. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. AFR Talk.